Welcome to Brand Builders TV. Deep dive topics, tools and resources brought to you by global thought leaders from within the Brand Builders Club. This show gives you access to the strategies that you can use to move forward with ease and flow in every area of your life and business. In today's show, Lisa is going to share how vulnerability could be your superpower. Learn it, model it, and get shit done. Let's go.
Good afternoon and welcome to Brand Builders TV. My name's Lisa King and I'm here for actually the very first time, so it's really exciting. And I'm here today to talk to you about being unapologetically you and how vulnerability could actually be your superpower. Now, what many people, we are also very different, aren't we? And many people think of vulnerability in different ways. Now, for me, I look at vulnerability and see it as being true to who you are at any given time and being seen being seen in any situation with no actual control of the outcomes of this given situation that you're in. That to me is vulnerability. Now, we are so unique. We are all so very different and all perfectly imperfect. Thankfully. How boring would life be if we were all the same? And with that in mind, we see vulnerability so very different. It may be that vulnerability to you is having a challenging conversation. It may be that vulnerability to you is feeling out of control, that you have no control over a given situation, or it could be that you have people around you that make you feel uncomfortable and you don't want to speak out. There are many, many different ways that vulnerability can show up for you. And I want to really talk to you today about everyday situations where vulnerability could be showing up and how you can recognize it and be able to have some ideas and some tools to be able to say, actually, I can do this. Because when we look at vulnerability, it can have many, many different effects on all of us. So it could be, let's look at it like a scale, where if I said to you, right, okay, how do you feel about being vulnerable? You could be down one end of the scale where you're sort of cowering, you're keeping yourself small because you feel really uncomfortable with the thought of being vulnerable. It might be that you have no, I'm not being vulnerable. Categorically, it's not going to happen and I'm not going to do it. Maybe you're at a different part of the scale where you've got your comfort zone, your vulnerability comfort zone, and you'll push yourself to the edge of that, but you won't dip your toe outside of it. You won't just take yourself far enough out so it feels that little bit more uncomfortable. You could be at the other end where you're sitting back. Somebody says about being vulnerable and you're smiling, you're looking around because it brings you joy to be vulnerable. So where are you along that spectrum? Where are you on that scale of what vulnerability actually means to you? So what I want to do is talk through some situations, some real life situations, and I want to see what you think. And do any of these actually resonate to you, for you? Okay, so what I want to do, let's look at relationships, let's look at connection. Because what I want to be able to show you is that by exercising that vulnerability muscle, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. I went to I get my words out. I went to a personal development event and I was at a gentleman's event called Ryan Pinnock, and he demonstrated what I saw as a really powerful way of demonstrating an exercise. So I'm going to share it with you. Now, I'm going to use the whiteboard there. So let's say this is your vulnerability comfort zone. Okay, so it might be that, let's say you have to have a conversation with somebody. You might have to have a conversation that's going to be quite uncomfortable and it makes you feel really vulnerable because you have no idea how that conversation is going to go, how they may react or respond. So it really is making you feel a bit uncertain, a bit uneasy, maybe that you're scared of what's going to happen. So I want to show you how using this band, how stretching that vulnerability band can actually help you in pushing forward and gaining confidence around being vulnerable. So this is the band. So let's say, for example, you have to have a conversation with somebody, and right now your comfort zone is about here. You don't want to stretch it any further because comfortable is here for you. Now, what it might be is you have this conversation. So you speak to a friend. Let's say your friend is overstepping the mark with her expectations of you, and you now want to speak with her because you're exhausted, or it's starting to feel uncomfortable. So you're now at this stage and you're having a conversation with your friend. Now, you don't want to be too vulnerable. You don't want to open that up too much, but you have a conversation and you express how you feel that there are times when you can't meet her expectations or what she needs. So that band has stretched a little. So what that means is you've stretched that comfort zone. You've had that conversation. So that vulnerability has expanded. So now you're here. What that means is that, let's say you have to have another conversation with that friend. It could be about something completely different, or it could actually be that you may need to reiterate that point that you'd already made. So instead of starting from here, you've already shown some vulnerability, so you can actually start from this point. And then any time that you expand that vulnerability comfort zone, that band can get stretched. And that can be the same for any given situation or conversation that you've got to have. So that band can get further and further. So your comfort zone is expanding each time. And that's the same with any situation, okay? So let's look at some everyday situations that may come up for you where you may not realize that you're feeling vulnerable, but where vulnerability comes in. So what I'd like to say is, if you've got any questions about anything that I'm talking about, or you want to make a comment, please feel free to put comments in the comment box. I will be interacting as I go along. And if you're watching on replay, then I just put any comments in and I'll be happy to catch up with them at any time, okay? So what I want to do is talk through, let's look at relationships and connection. So let's have a look at a work situation, a work relationship, where you may have an idea or something that you want to bring forward to your bosses or to, some peers that you have. But you think, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know if that's something that I want to bring up. The vulnerability there is, if I say something, how are they going to respond to me? Is there a fear of judgment? Is there a thought of, they're going to think I'm silly, they're going to think that idea is stupid? So you don't say something. But then with that vulnerability band, with that comfort zone, by bringing it forward and maybe speaking to somebody that you can use as a soundboard before you actually take it forward to peers, would help with regards to stretching that band that little bit without taking it too far that it actually stops you from moving forward. So that's more of a professional level. It could also be, let's use another professional example where you have a group of peers. So when you go into a new job and you think, I've got to fit in, I need to fit in, I need to, until I get my feet under the table, then I'll be able to be me and I'll be able to express myself more. And you're in this peer group and you're really not feeling comfortable. They're either discussing things that you're not comfortable with, or you think, actually, I don't have the same values as my peer group. But you really feel vulnerable in saying something because of that loss of connection, that disconnect that you may find with that peer group. So a good way of looking at this to get the band to start stretching it a little bit, I'll get my left and rights correct, is that you could, again, speak with somebody that's in that group that you connect with more than others and speak with them. Or look at other peer groups or other people within that group that you actually are more aligned with your values, and speak with them and join them, because it's really easy to feel vulnerable around things when connection is involved, because connection is such a powerful thing. And this is something that is so important to us humans. It's really important, especially when you've got to be at work for so many hours. So that's from a professional point of view. What if you had what if it was around, your partner, and you looked at vulnerability in a little bit of a different way? Let's say it's around trust. It could be that you feel really vulnerable around trust with regards to a partner, because you've actually had previous partners that have cheated on you or that have treated you a certain way. You know that your current partner wouldn't do that, but there is still that vulnerability there because of the fact that things were so extreme in previous relationships. So how can you expand and use the band to stretch that tiny bit? One way of doing that is to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be that you have to speak about everything and tell the whole story around it, or you don't have to initially. It could be that you have a conversation where you just explain part of it without going into the deep emotional side of it and the feelings involved, but express and say, I'm not saying this is what you're going to do, but this is what's happened before. So you've just got to give me a little bit of time. It might be that you have, again, in a relationship and a partner, it could be that you have, your barriers are so high because of previous things that have happened. And again, this may not be anything to do with your partner now, but what it could be is that in previous relationship, or you've seen, for example, parents in a toxic relationship, so you've built barriers around yourself to protect your heart, to protect your emotions and feelings. And what that's done is it's sort of snowballed. It's like a snowball effect then with different things that have happened, where you think, actually, this has happened again. So the snowball gets bigger and it brings these emotions and these different feelings with it, until there comes a point where you think, actually, I've got to do this because it's really affecting things. So again, it's about allowing and stretching that band. Okay, so stretching that vulnerability comfort band and that band that tiny bit further, and taking small steps to be able to address that given situation that you find yourself in. And at the moment, we all know that vulnerability is massive, because everybody is in a completely different situation that we may not have been in. And some people are looking at the situation around COVID with what's going on as a real positive thing. It's been okay. Everyone's been nobody in their family's been affected, and it's great. So they've got the support. They're still working. They're okay, and they're able to get through. Whereas others, there could be financial situations. There could be health implications. There could be so many different situations that are making you feel really, really vulnerable. And if vulnerability is something for you that you see as a weakness, or you see that there's fears behind being able to express how you're feeling, what's going on, what your situation is, it may be that you need to look at really expanding that band at tiny, tiny steps. It could be that you might need to look at groups. It may be that you need to confide in different people that have either been there before or that understand what it is that you are dealing with right now. And remember, once you start expanding this, it will get easier and easier and easier. And that will happen. But it's about getting that starting and just having small steps and really expanding on what you're doing with regards to expressing and stretching that band or exercising that vulnerability muscle. I think it's also really important to understand that when people are under stress and when people are in situations where they may not have come across it before, or their emotions are heightened, we always tend to potentially act differently. We behave in a different way, we talk a different way, and that really can be the case. So it's also really important at that point to take a step back and remember that if you act from a place of stepping back and calm and thinking, that vulnerability won't be so extreme or feel so extreme because your emotions aren't as heightened. So you'll be able then to act on that from a different place. So have a think about, what is vulnerability for you? What situations are you in currently where you might feel that vulnerability is too challenging, it provokes too many negative emotions for you? And think about how you can take that small step, that tiny vulnerability, that tiny step towards stretching the band. It is quite funny because I'm at different sides on the screen, so if you wonder why I'm doing a bit of a shimmy with my band, that's what it is. So please remember, if you want to make any comments, please put the comments in here. It'd be great to be able to engage with you live. If you are catching up on replay, it's great to see you here, and if you've got any questions, please put them in. Now, I want to speak with you about some boundaries. And I know some people like to talk about boundaries and some don't. I think boundaries are really important. So you may think, well, what's that got to do with vulnerability? So vulnerability and stretching that band so that vulnerability can become a superpower takes time, and it takes different situations to keep coming up to be able to stretch that band. Because you may find that being vulnerable in one situation is quite comfortable because the band has been stretched and it's stretching that bit more and you're okay in that given situation. But it might be that being vulnerable in other situations is a little bit more uncomfortable and challenging. What I want you to remember is that challenges are always going to come up. They are always going to come up because life, that's what life does. It throws challenges at us because we need to step through certain events. We need to learn certain lessons. And by being you in any given situation, by being able to be unapologetically perfectly imperfect you, makes that vulnerability so much easier to be able to feel, to be able to do that and be vulnerable. So let's look at some challenges that could come up. It might be that we spoke earlier about friends. It could be that you have friends that what happens is they have expectations of you. And those expectations are that you're supposed to be there all the time. And if they ring you and ask you for help, then you need to be there. And the thing is with that is that if you then make a comment back, or you react to that, or you say something they're not going to like, or you say, actually, no, I can't do that. The concern and the vulnerability there is that loss of connection again. So if, for example, that happens and you know that you really want to stretch that band, what you can do is literally, so you're still starting to stretch that band, but you're saying to them, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. It could be, let's say, for example, they've asked you to go over to see them because they need you to help with something. But to be honest, right now is really not a good time. So the people pleaser in some of us, I used to be a perpetual, I had a PhD in people pleasing. And this was something that for me was really, really challenging initially, was to actually put it out there and say, right now, I can't do that. I will come and help you at another time, but right now I can't do that. the vulnerability there is, will they walk away? Will they turn around and say, actually, right, I won't ask you again? That is there, isn't it? The vulnerability and the thoughts and emotions linked to that are there. The important thing to remember is that there comes a time when you have to start valuing you and you have to put yourself first, because otherwise the expectations and the perceptions of what people want from you isn't going to change. So it's really important to start saying no and to start not even explaining yourself, but saying to them, well, actually, I need to do something for me right now. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to ever do that for you again. But right now I need to put myself first. So there are many, many relationships that can leave us feeling really vulnerable. And I think family is massive. So let's look at this current situation. Let's look at finances. Money is such a taboo subject with some people. And let's say, for example, because of the current situation, this has left you in a real tight squeeze from a financial situation. Actually admitting that, or talking to somebody and saying, I really need help, that is massively vulnerable and puts you in a massively vulnerable situation potentially. And again, if you stretch that band, how do you do that? How would you do that? It's about finding how you take those small steps and just stretch that band bit by bit. So maybe it could be that you might say, I really need some help, and ask the right person. Look at who you can ask for help. And if there's nobody around you, look and get that help that you need from somewhere, and be okay asking for the help. And again, take small steps, small steps. And those steps lead to much bigger changes. I think it's really also important that we know that challenges are going to come up. We know that there's going to be certain changes, uncertain changes. There's going to be lots of different things that come up. But the important thing to remember is being true to who you are at any given time is a beautiful thing. And that vulnerability band, once it's stretched, I honestly can say will bring you such inner peace and joy. And what is really, really important for me to get across to you today is remember that you're unique and that you are amazing and you are perfectly imperfect. And being vulnerable and showing people your true self at any given time is not only beautiful to see, but it's also really inspirational. And that's something that people around you, the little ones in your family, can get lots of inspiration from. So what I want you to look at is, what is vulnerable? Where do I feel vulnerable? Where is it that you think, actually, yeah, if I'm in this situation, then that I feel vulnerable in that situation. So what can I do to be able to lessen that fear around being vulnerable? You might find that if you have a given situation that you know makes you feel comfortable, then have maybe a plan of action for when that situation comes up. And you think, right, when this happens, this is what I'm going to do. Because it may feel more comfortable for you to actually have that in hand, or literally there, ready, so that you know when that comes up, you can say, actually, I know what I'm going to do. Because sometimes when a situation comes up, it could be that we need a really quick reaction to it or a quick response. And if we already know what that response is going to be, we're less likely to react in a moment of stress if we're put on the spot. So I'd love to know, what does vulnerability look like for you? How does it show up? Does it show up where you tend to sort of round your shoulders, put your head down, and you tend to not want to acknowledge it? Could it be that you just immediately back off the moment you feel vulnerable? You immediately just say, no, I'm not doing this, and you walk away. That used to be what I did. I would walk away. Vulnerability for me was my biggest weakness. I had so many barriers up due to many different things from my childhood, lots of different events, being brought up around domestic violence. I was assaulted when I was 12. I had lots of medical things happening. And all of these things, this snowball got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the barriers just got higher and higher and higher. So I had to understand where I was needing to address things. Where was it that I felt this need to actually develop myself and to really grow on a personal level? And I really found that understanding self and understanding who I was and what my values were, what was really important to me, what did I stand for? That was really key. So once I understood that, and I understood what was important, and I understood who I was in my core, I then looked around me and I looked at the people that were around me. Were those people truly aligned with me? Or were they aligned with the person that I used to be, not the person that I wanted to be, and the person I was growing into? So I think it's really important to have a look around you. The saying is that we become the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And boy, did I get a situation when I looked at those around me. And then I made those changes. I'm not saying it's easy, but over time, it makes a massive difference. By walking away from people and places and environments where you are unable to be who you truly are and who you love being, it's one of the most powerful things that I think I've ever done. And what that does is it creates space for people that are aligned with who you are, that you love being around, where most importantly, you can be you at all times. You don't have to put a mask on and be anybody else. You can be truly, truly, authentically you. And when that happens, what you'll find is it has a ripple effect around you. You will be, you're in a higher vibration. If you're looking at it from, energetically, you will attract totally different people to you. You will attract opportunities that come from places you never would have thought, because now you're actually in alignment with people around you. You go to places you love going. You've got like this inner joy and this inner peace, because being vulnerable is okay. Being vulnerable is a beautiful thing. And being vulnerable is now your superpower. You take those small steps to be able to stretch that vulnerability band. And what that does is that builds your confidence. It builds your strength and your courage. And the more you do that, the more you stretch that band around everyday situations that you're in, I promise you, your world will change. Life will change, your world will change, and people around you will see a different you in the most beautiful way. So take those steps to stretch that vulnerability band and be unapologetically you. Let vulnerability be your superpower, because you are unique, you are amazing, and you are perfectly imperfect. And I really look forward to watching your vulnerability comfort zone stretch and stretch until not being vulnerable is actually uncomfortable. How beautiful is that? Thank you so much for joining me and for watching. And if you have any questions at all, please put them into the comments box. My email address is here as well. So it's lisa@clarityfocusandgrowth.com. Please feel free to get in touch. And I really appreciate you taking the time. And I hope that these ideas and different tips that I've given you help you to stretch that vulnerability band. Thank you. And until I see you again, have the most wonderful time. There are so many different time zones. Have a brilliant, brilliant rest of your day, whatever time it is. And I will see you soon. Take care.
I hope that you've enjoyed the show today as much as we've enjoyed making it for you. If you've got anything out of this episode, please do tell someone else how they can subscribe to the Brand Builders TV channel at youtube.com/brandbuilderstv. Why not join us at our next Brand Builders Thinkubator, a global mastermind that we run every week to take away the loneliness of being in business on your own. For more information and to book your place, visit light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. That's light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. Until next time, be the ripple that you wish to see in the world, and we'll see you soon.